You know,
I don't disagree.
yeah. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, August the 25th. Before we get started, I would ask that you stand if you're able and join us for the pledge. I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories on which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions, and it is with this statement we declare to honor and respect past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. Standard reminder to members of council to declare any pecuniary interest they may have. Clear? No? Okay. Minutes from our July 28th council meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes as presented and circulated? By Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Sample. Any discussion on those? All in favor? Sure. All right. We have a couple of presentations this evening, but before we get into that, are there any public question period questions? Nothing submitted prior. All right, so the first presentation is from our development charges consultants, Hempson. They're going to walk us through what they've been working on. So I think we're joined by Craig and Danielle. Maybe just Craig.
Yes. Good evening. Danielle's here as well. Yes. Thank you.
How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Trust you are as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Turn it over to you and you can walk us through your presentation.
Yes, thank you. It's good evening. It's a pleasure to be with council and the public this evening. I'm not sure who's running the slides for me. Can Danielle do it, or is the clerk looking after that?
Alice has it here, so if you just let her know when you want to flip to the next one.
Very good. Thank you very much. So as indicated, we're just here to give you an update in terms of the development charges background study update. So if we could just go right to the next slide, I'll just say what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is provide you with an update on the study process. I know council's very well aware of that, but I'll just give a few highlights. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the development forecast that we're using for the purposes of this update, and then give a fairly high-level summary of the DC capital program and move quite quickly into the rates that we've calculated arising from that capital program and the development that we're anticipating to occur over the next 10 years. I will then compare those rates with your current rates and highlight where the differences are occurring and provide you with some rate comparisons with other jurisdictions and municipalities in the general area. And we'll talk about some of the next steps. So just on to the next slide. As you're aware, the town has a couple of different development charge bylaws. We sort of split them up for different reasons. Under the recent changes to the Development Charges Act, bylaws can now last up to 10 years. It used to be 5 years. And so both of your bylaws could extend out much further. However, as we're aware, you're experiencing significant capital pressures, both in the Parks and Recreation, but most notably within your wastewater services. And so it's time that you update those to ensure that development is paying appropriate shares and that the town can move forward in a fiscally responsible manner to accommodate and facilitate growth and development there in the town. So on to the next slide. I think many of you have seen this before, and it's a schematic of the development charge process that we go through and is consistent with and meets all of the requirements of the Development Charges Act. I'm not going to go through each of the boxes, but I'll just explain generally what we do. We work together with town staff and with your planner to identify how much development we anticipate occurring over the next 10 years, and I'm going to highlight that in a moment. And then we work with staff and with the various capital budgeting and master servicing studies that you've undertaken to say, well, what are the increased servicing needs to accommodate that growth? Recognizing that as you develop and redevelop land, add new houses and people and new employment uses, that they create an increased demand for your services. And this is a mechanism to help pay for that. However, there are a number of restrictions and steps that we have to go through under the Development Charges Act. One of the critical ones is that we cannot levy development charges at a level greater than the way that the municipality has provided the service on average over the last 15 years. Some of you that have heard me before will say, but Craig, you used to say 10 years. This is one of those legislative changes. Now we're restricted by a 15-year historical service level change. Once we do that, we've identified what capital needs are related to development and potentially eligible for funding under the Development Charges Act. However, we also need to account for any grants or subsidies that you might receive, recognize that there might be some benefit to the existing residents of undertaking some of those improvements, and account for any monies that might be in development charge reserve funds, or indeed, if they're in a negative position, we make a series of adjustments. We're then left with the share of the capital program that is eligible to be funded from development, and we allocate benefit to residential growth, non-residential growth, and calculate our development charge rates. And that's what I'm going to share with you over these next few minutes. So if we go to the next slide, we have a high-level summary of the development forecast. And as I indicated, we're looking at a 10-year period, 2025 to 2034. We anticipate you adding up to 1,500 new dwelling units over that period of time, and that your census population will approach 14,250 persons. And so that's the amount of residential growth we're looking to accommodate and to provide infrastructure for. You're also going to add employees, just about 1,059 over that next 10 years, and they're going to be accommodated in just shy of 80,000 square meters of new non-residential building space. All of that development requires infrastructure, and let's just talk now about the capital program necessary. So on the next slide, just as an intro to that capital program, as you're aware, what we do is we look at your 2025 capital budget and make sure that we're aligned with what those commitments have been identified through that document. We also look at your past development charge background studies. We have discussions with staff. We look at your servicing plans and the best estimates of what it's going to take to undertake expansions to your facilities, especially the wastewater treatment plant moving forward. We then look to see what grants and subsidies you might obtain from that. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And I know you're dealing with one issue later in your agenda. And then we account for those other factors that I noted a moment ago. The next slide in the deck here provides a summary of the capital program. And the background study will provide all of the details and all of the individual projects that roll up into the summary that I'm sharing with you on this slide. What I'll do is I'll just use library services as an example, and then I'll talk about the bottom line. So in library services, we've got just over $1 million in identified infrastructure needs, no anticipated grants or subsidies, and then you see that benefit to existing column. We recognize that there's a little bit of that improvement that's addressing some existing needs, and so we're netting off $175,000. That money has to be funded from other sources, which will really fall to your property tax base. The town has been collecting development charge monies for library services for some time, building them up to allow for the expansion of the services. So you've got 461,000 in the reserve today that'll fund a share of that $1 million capital program. And then the balance of it, 417,000, is what we've said is related to development over the next 10 years and fundable from development charges. So you can see in total, the capital program is some $191 million, quite significant. But you'll notice as well that within the roads and related capital program, we are anticipating contributions from either the county and or upper levels of government for a significant road project of some 72 million. In addition, we have some benefit to existing shares, largely within the wastewater treatment plant, because we're doing some upgrades to the servicing capacity as well as improvements to the treatment level there. So there's about 10 million netted off from that, and a total benefit to existing of just shy of 14 million. The remainder of the capital program is actually related to development and fundable from development charges. You've got about 14 million in the reserves that we're going to utilize, and then the in-period share, that's which we're hoping to recover from development charges over the next 10 years, approaches $70 million. And then there's about 20 million of the program that is development related, but will benefit growth beyond 2034. Just before we move on, you can see that the main contributors to the development-related capital program are your Parks and Recreation program, which accounts for about 17 million of the in-period recovery, and then its water and wastewater services at 9.5 million and 30 million respectively, but also the roads program at some 4.4 million, and of course the wastewater collection. You will see that we've differentiated wastewater facilities from collection, and that's because we just wanted to highlight the plant costs separately, and you'll see why in a few minutes. Moving on to the next slide. I'm just going to talk about the rates that we've calculated. Residential rates are calculated on a per capita basis and then expressed on a type of built form like single and semi-detached based on their occupancy patterns. Non-residential charges are expressed on a per square meter of gross floor area. So moving on, let's talk about the residential calculated charges first. And I'm sure you're all anxious to know how those compare with your current charges, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But you can see from here the fully calculated rates now for a single or semi-detached unit would be some $58,554. Wastewater facilities is accounting for a significant amount of that at 36%. And you'll see that I've also isolated out the financing component of that, as we provided for and recognized that for the town to undertake that work, you would likely need to debenture that work unless you sought some collective work together with the development industry to help front-end finance a share of these works. And I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes as well. You can also see that the Parks and Recreation component is significant at 25% of the calculated rates. And finally, you'll see that the rates are lower for the other unit types. The rows and multiples, things like townhouses, would be 44,196. And then the apartment category, we break down into larger apartments, 2-bedroom or larger, at just shy of 35,000 a unit. And then the smaller apartments are at 22,619. That's reflecting different occupancies. The fewer people in the unit, the less demand they place on services, so they have a lower development charge. On the next slide, we have a comparison with your current charges. So the current charge for a single detached unit is some 33,631. So you can see that we've increased it fairly significantly under these draft calculated rates, increasing by almost 25,000 a unit or 75% up to the 58,000 that I mentioned earlier. It's really important to note that what is driving this increase is primarily the wastewater facilities, and in particular the plant at some $20,000, almost 21,000, and the financing costs on that adding another 7,000 a unit. There's also an increase in the Parks and Recreation charge, but it's offset in part by some declines in some of the other what we often refer to as general services. So some significant pressure on your development charge rates, but it's reflective of that cost associated with meeting the servicing needs and providing housing enabling infrastructure. On the next slide, we have some comparisons, and I've got two comparison slides with other jurisdictions. This is reflecting those within the county as well. And you can see that currently you're in about the middle of that group, that lower area, about 37,000, and we've added in the county or the upper tier charges there. With the rates that I've just shared with you, the calculated, it would put you up to second highest below Grand Valley. And I've highlighted there that we're at 62,000. And I just wanted to highlight that financing component, $7,000, because we're going to talk about that in a few minutes at the end of the presentation. On the next slide, we've added in some other jurisdictions, largely in Simcoe County. And you can see that New Tecumseth is in excess of 100,000 for a single detached unit. And the town of Collingwood is approaching $100,000 for theirs, recognizing that they were successful in receiving quite a significant grant on their water treatment plant expansion. Now, that shows that you're sort of still in the upper portion of this. Now, of course, if we added in GTA municipalities like Markham and Vaughan and others in Peel region, they are much more significant than your current rates and the proposed rates or calculated rates. Just moving on now to the residential rate comparisons or the rates themselves, we're calculating a charge for non-residential uses at $169 per square meter. And you can see from this slide, once again, the wastewater facilities are representing upwards of 60% of that charge. And so it's really about hard services for the non-residential. Comparing on the next slide, the current charge non-residentially, likewise, we're getting about a 73% increase, going from just shy of $100 a square meter up to the 170. And then on the next slide, we've got some comparisons. Oh, I apologize. This slide is somewhat out of order, and I apologize for the disconnect in the presentation. But one of the things I wanted to speak to was about the wastewater treatment plant. And I noted before that I calculated or we separated out the financing costs. So the charge without financing, if you didn't have to finance the plant, would be some 51,370. The financing adds that additional 7,000 a unit. What we are proposing to carry forward in the background study in the bylaw for consultation with the development industry, that if a developer or developers are willing to step up and help assist with delivering that wastewater treatment plant, we can construct a rate that would allow them to pay the lower charge if they either prepaid their development charges or assisted in front-end financing a share of the work. This approach has been used successfully in other jurisdictions like the town of Innisfil, the town of New Tecumseth, and other places. And so we want to see if there's a way of helping and working with the development industry to deliver the plant expansion. So I'm sorry for the disconnect, but if we go to the next slide, we're going to see the non-residential rate comparisons. Once again, you're currently sort of in the middle lower section of that rate comparison at about 110 a square meter. The new charge would move you up near the top, just shy of Orangeville, but recognizing again, there's a significant financing component. The next slide gives the broader group of municipalities for comparisons. And you can see now there's several other municipalities that were on our residential comparison that non-residentially are higher than yours. New Tecumseh is significantly higher, as is Collingwood, but also Clearview, Wasaga Beach, and Orangeville are all higher than you non-residentially, both under your current charge and the ones that I've just shared with you as the draft calculated. On to the next slide. This is really just to wrap up my presentation then, is that some of the key points that will require of council moving forward in this process is to have you express your intent to undertake the development-related capital program that we set out in the background study. That recognizes, of course, that as you go through your annual capital budgeting, priorities could change in the ability to deliver them. But what we're simply saying is that the municipality will provide the infrastructure necessary to meet the seriously needs of new development as it occurs. Also, what we would be looking for is approval to proceed forward with that differentiated wastewater treatment plant calculation, the with and without financing, to have dialogue with the development industry about how the town might deliver that important infrastructure. We also want to continue forward with the townwide approach for the services that we are examining under this process. And then ultimately, when we come forward with the public meeting and the bylaw, it will be important to ask council to determine whether or not they feel they needed a second public meeting, but that's something we can adjust in the future. We recognize that there's some significant rate increases here, and there are implementation options available to council. However, we have to recognize that if you provide for a phase-in or if you discount the rates, that foregone development charge revenue would need to be met by other funding sources. And if you're not successful at attracting funding from upper levels of government, it's likely to fall to your property tax rate or your utility rates. Always a hard message to deliver, but in this context, I thought it was important to finish on that comment. That's the end of my formal presentation. Hope I haven't taken too long, but I'd be pleased to take any questions or comments.
Thanks, Greg. Questions? Thank you, sir. I did appreciate clarifying that financing versus non-financing option, that's something that we can explore with developers, and to know that has been used successfully in other jurisdictions, I think is helpful. So yeah, continue those discussions, and we'll see you back, I guess, at some point in the not too distant future.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
All right.
good. Thank you so much.
All the questions. All right. Okay. Can I have a motion then to receive the report and presentation from Hemson for information? By Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Cachardi. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you both. All right. Next presentation, we have Ashton and Craig from the Shelburne Cricket Club. Yeah. Come on up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can come sit up here if you want. Oh my God! Yeah. All right. So afternoon. Yeah. So we have your presentation in the package. We can see it back there, and you guys can see it up here. So perfect. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay. First of all, thank you and good evening, afternoon. Mayor and council members and management of town of Shelburne. The whole idea of this presentation is all about how can we enhance again the temporary cricket facility or KTH Park we have, which we love and adore. And just wanted to start. So thank you for giving us the place to promote cricket not only in Shelburne, in whole different county. So now the cricket is growing. So if Alice can go to next. So this is our 5th year anniversary, 5 years, Shelburne Cricket Club. We started, based on historian roles, 1836, the first Shelburne Cricket Club was here. 2019, 20 officially we started. 5 years, professional T25 cricket with hard ball, not tennis ball, like professional cricket. Attract a lot of local talent, young kids, got scholarships, bring people from mental health issues by playing cricket. They were just become more humble and more focused on the game. So those were the achievements I proud enough to share with all of you. So now 5 years we're playing on a grass pitch in a baseball diamond. There is no problem with baseball diamond. It's a big enough ground for us to play. We are playing for 5 years. We are not asking big huge enhancements, just basic stuff. And the reason behind is, it's more community growth is coming. So before I will jump into why we want those changes, so this is our 4 people management. We are trying. So myself, I'm Hassan Siddiqui, Craig Parker, Vice President, handle second in command when I'm not available. And Myra, she's General Secretary and Treasurer, making sure the finance and all those things of the club is healthy. And Zeth manage our social media and make sure that outside teams can come and play with us and promote cricket in Shelburne and in Dufferin. So there's 4 people we manage. Of course, there's coaches, there are captains, there are umpires, there are more in management, but these are 4 people in our org structure. So Alice, next slide. Again, as mentioned, the whole idea is how to enhance the KTH ground facilities. The first thing, the major thing is the safety and to attract more new players because community is growing. Every year we receive, we started with 7 players, 35, 60, 80. Now we have 5 teams, and plus we have different county cup. Number of tournaments are happening. Middle of the season, people, once they know about it, they just come in and they want to play. And half the, 5% of them, they leave because they feel safety concerns. Even though we give them safety gears and everything, but they say, oh, it's still uneven, the game is not getting that better, it's hard to play. So those minor areas we're trying to cover. With this enhancement, of course, time of play will reduce, which is beneficial for the community and for the club, for the town as well, because normal our game is T25 game format is 3 hours to 4 hours because we need to prepare everything from scratch every game. So we require 5 hours. If you have 2 games, then you have more time to spend on that. So that's why we are trying to make the area more safer and safety in a current situation. We are not talking about drastic changes, just minor changes if possible. So next slide, please. So why upgrades? Again, growing cricket community in the area. I'm sure Council is aware of it. It's not only Shelburne Cricket Club. There are other group of people now playing in the morning as well and in the afternoon. We are playing, and I heard there are more interest for schools also developing because we are partnering with the upper district school boards, and every kid is coming and saying, hey, we are playing with the plastic ball. We want to play with the leather ball. Do we have the facilities? Yeah, we have Shelburne Cricket Club, KTH Park in Shelburne. Do come out, but again, it's not safe for anyone who is, from 10 to 13-year-old facing 145 km/h stone on them. So that's why we just it's growing in short. And current facility is great. I'm not saying it's not. Town go above and beyond. I really appreciate and applaud, especially the development and Jamie Caskey and everyone, Alan Kuchari, Council, Lindsay, Dan Sample, Kyle, and I know Walter, you were with us most of the time. I get a chance to talk to Shane Hall in one of our religious facility as well. The facility is great. And town is doing everything. They're cutting the grass, what we are requesting. The problem is not that great, even though this year they've installed a new sod with an objective of giving that straight level. But what happens is that wherever they install the sod, that area become more bumpy because it didn't press that much, and that's become more dangerous. Even if you're wearing the gears, the ball is bouncing like from the head, and it's not safe. There are 2 incidents happened also that we need to bring ambulance. One person collarbone was gone. Other person got hit under the neck, and Zed Beg is one of them. So we need incidents happen, even though it's fully protected. So we felt that, hey, it's about time, 5 years, we build our business case. There is no harm in putting our voices there. We're gonna partner as much as we can. So that's where the main reason of the upgrade. And again, it's a create inclusive multi-purpose sports facility. There is a baseball, there is a diamond, there is a soccer field, there's cricket. So there is a good opportunity if we can enhance a little bit of KTH Park. We love that beautiful container there that take at least 2 car parking slot. If there is another better way of at least showcasing, our club is big. We are just using that half of it, and it's very struggle for us to put our scoreboard in, bringing our spray paints, boundary lines. So some kind of enhancements it's required there. Next slide, please. So current challenges, again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to stress too much. Uneven pitch affect player safety and quality. No shaded area. That's the biggest problem. The reason is because it is built on a baseball architecture. Behind the cage, we have chairs, and the sun is coming directly. So if we're going to put our spectators and scorers there, they cannot see anything. because it's in the middle of the pitch. So that's why we take it near the KTH park, like the KTH building area, so we can see. Before we tried near the residential area, but there were some, because we do commentary, we do update the scoreboards, the residents was not happy about it, so we just move it ourselves there. And our players are sitting behind the cage, the sun, and it's not a short game. In 90 minutes you finish. It's a long game, whole day, sort of lunch and breakfast. You're doing everything. You spend whole day like a picnic there. So we need some kind of good sitting area for the players and spectators to come and sit. Maybe a little bit shaded near the tennis court. Maybe you see that white post behind that area. So it's much better. So you're not directly hitting the sun. The reason behind is that because you're sitting opposite to the sun, the ball is rock solid, and you're hitting 145-kilometer ball, and you hit with the proper English glue. It's coming so fast, they don't even have a chance to move around. You cannot see it. So that's why we were thinking that if there is some shaded areas and for our scorers, because our game is more than 160 deliveries per game, more than 300 per game, 2 innings. So the scorer need to update the score every ball, every single ball. So putting our equipments outside to keep the electronic online scoring, it's hard because rain and sun, destroy our solar batteries and everything. So anything we can do for shaded area, that's great. Scoreboard. We built our own in order for batsmen and bowlers and fielders to see what's going on, and for the audience to see. We need to bring it outside, put it back again. That's take at least minimum 15 minutes of time to install it and deassemble the game. So we were thinking if we can install it forever for everyone. Everything is there, just put 2 posts, just install it. We just need to bring our numbers, and it saves time and consume less time.
So it's a manual sign?
It is manual sign. There is no electricity. It's already designed. It's just hooks and everything. It's just we need to install it instead of dragging and bringing back and then forward. No drinking water. So we need to bring our own cooler because, again, as I mentioned, 5 hours of game. Everyone is bringing their own drinks, but sometimes they don't. So, and it's, the weather is getting so heated, like sometimes 30, 32 Celsius, you're playing. So we need to bring our own cooler, put our own mineral water there. I saw tennis players doing the same thing, baseball players doing the same, cricket. Why not we just install a water fountain for everyone to use it? So we don't need to bring our own bottle, we save it. The problem we'll save plastic waste. Oh my God, it's a nightmare for our management to just collect every game, collect every bottle, put it in the garbage bin. So if that's something can be done, that's great. Electricity, because we're using our solar batteries, batteries to equip our laptops, cameras, and everything. There is no proper electricity there. Only electricity outlet which we find is near the washroom outside, which we put our cooler in order to water to just get a little bit cool in. So if that's minor enhancement can be done. So these are the biggest challenges we face in 5 years. Current challenges, again, there are more, but I just want to keep it simple. So next slide, please. Thank you. Proposed upgrade, I already explained, graded pitch. If there is possible shaded gazebo, electric outlet. When I say lighting, it doesn't mean that huge light. Floodlight means electricity. That's what I'm saying. Oh, if the floodlight is there, my God, how many tournaments I will bring it here? I'm not sure. But again, just 2 cents. Actually, speaking of lighting, I did talk to Jamie Keski if it's possible to use the soccer field for cricket. But then when I saw the dimension, it's a little bit shorter, but I don't want to, destroy a soccer club thing. No. Not destroy means take their time. Didn't mean, they are not suitable. But again, if there is any park where we are bringing floodlights, I think so KTH is one of them. Hopefully, if that's possible. We talk about scoreboard installations, water fountain. Next slide. So benefits, again, safer playing condition. We will more open to our school kids, young kids, ladies to come out and play. This year, that's one of the reasons why ladies didn't join. First reason was their timing also, and because we don't have that much time to play cricket, because our other community members want to take the time, so we need to shorten our tournament. And plus the safety. They are playing with yellow leather ball instead of pink or white hard leather ball, but still, it's not safe for them to play And again, greater engagement of families. Speaking of spectators, there is two people in the neighborhood. They are senior people. I think so their background from British or they used to come in their motorcycle, the disc motorcycle. Every game they are there, and they came from grass mountains, and they just there is no proper disability area for them to park themselves. They just find them behind the cage or behind our commentator box or media tent. So there is an attraction. People want to watch. They wait and watch the game, for at least 30, 40 minutes. And then they go and they learn something new. So that's why, I think so it's good if we increase the durability of actually the playing area where we are, it will attract more spectators. And again, if, it will promote active lifestyle. In summer, we have only 6 or 4 months of, 4 to 5 months of summer and fall where we play cricket. And again, it's because it's a new sport. 5 years we are playing and doing, aligning with towns, bringing new leagues and recreation activities. Next, again, don't look at those numbers. This is just me comparing with other clubs, what other Aurelia club or Mississauga club, small clubs, when they started with us, what exactly they did. They started with the baseball ground as well. I heard there is in nearby Elliston, they built a cricket facility, the AstroTurf, but the ground is not that big like us. So how the ground is that they can only play straight, they cannot play at the back. So it's not 360 forward shaped ground. So based on those estimates, I figured out if we want to use existing cricket pitch, we are not installing too many stuff. We already have mats installed. Not installed, we already purchased that. It's inside the container, sitting there. What we need is that every season, if every season a town grade that area and install it in May and deassemble it in October. I don't think so it will affect anything to baseball community because it's just a flat thing. It's just a flat carpet installed in the middle, so they don't need to cut the grass, they don't need to anything, just one statement, and it will still build the integrity of the field. It will not want to do wear and tear too much to the grass, which is happening now. So if that's possible, that's one. If not, then if we are just keeping the grass pitch as is, I think so every year just to keep that rectangular 22 square yard, I believe so that's right. Yeah, the area which we cut just straight enough, it's going to be cost $3,000 minimum. With if you talk to any I don't know, grading company or, garden, prepare the grass. Yeah. If you want to install an AstroTurf, like a proper green AstroTurf, seamless, there is no problem. That's my understanding from 2 clubs is that approximately it costs $12,000 to install it, minimum. I'm not sure what's the labor cost. This is just what I know from the installation of that one piece. And gazebo shed, again, based on Home Hardware, Home Depot, or anywhere shed shops you see, it's 2,000 to 4,000, small 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 in an area where we can use some chair and table and put some electricity and let the scorer sitting inside. Smaller club, we can treat that thing as a separate clubhouse. We can be used by baseball people if they want to, other cricket community and by us. And scoreboard, just install 2 posts. And we already have it, install that. Water fountain, I'm not sure. This is, again, I just did a very rough search online and it's saying to install a simple water fountain with the plumbing and water line is already there and put some old electricity with $1,000. So I'm assuming between 6,000 to 19,000-ish in investments to enhance existing cricket ground or a KTH ground. And funding is possible mix of town budget and what I can ask my community members, the cricket community members, if they can chip in something. And Lindsay did give us that idea. If we can build a small account that every year we are pitching it, so there will be some amount which we can go through that. So, but the problem is that when I bring that idea to my community, they say, what is in it for me? Why we are chipping in for the town when we are paying the rent and the property tax? Is it guaranteed that Shelburne Cricket Club will receive the ground always? Why we are doing this thing for other cricket community? Or I say no, it's not. It's the community thing. So we are both big advocate of, in charity and sharing it, but again, it's a small club, and it's not easy. A lot of students are playing in it, so I'm not sure that that's possible or not. So, anything you want to add? So next slide. So these are I hope that I'm on time. So these are the things which we just need to highlight. There are a number of other stuff there, but that's just for the references. So any questions?
Excellent. But your timing is good, because we haven't started budget discussions for next year.
Oh.
So I appreciate the fact you're here now as opposed to 2 months from now. And my thought is, we sort of take this back and factor that in as part of our 2026 budget discussion. But by all means, if there are questions now in terms of clarifying.
I have a question, and it's for Jim. The water fountain. We have water fountain at Greenwood Park at the bathroom facility. Just I correct in that thought process. It's not there anymore.
It's there, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work,
Yeah.
but it's there.
Yeah, it's there. It just-
Okay. It should work.
I actually brought that up a while back that I wanted a new
Yeah,
one.
it should be working.
Yeah.
At the bathroom facilities, is it not hard at KTH Park to put a water fountain at the bathroom facilities?
Through your worship, currently there is a yard hydrant there. I believe it was damaged with some of the snow removal equipment, so I'm not too sure if it's operational or not, but that's relatively easy to fix up to put a new curb socket or whatnot for that yard hydrant, so there is water accessible there at that point. The fountain again would be a bit more involved budget wise because we had to budget costs for it.
I mean, like we have at, even if we put up something similar to what we used to have for the campers at, Middle Park. Coming out of the ground with a tap on it that they can, get water out of. Just something that should be an easy fix for that particular situation. That's all I was thinking of in that particular situation.
Yes, we can double check that with utilities, see what the issue is with the yard hydrant, make sure we get it operational again.
Okay, if we can get that operation, at least that takes care of something for them for this year.
Oh, thank you very much. But again, and as Mayor Wade, you mentioned, that's good timing for next year. Again, existing area, before we used to play, I just want to highlight this. The last 4 years, we were playing almost 35 to 45 games. Now, because more in the morning, the grounds are also going. So they're approximately playing the same amount of games. So just imagine the wear and tear is happening, even though we install a new sod, it's almost gone. So there are only 4 areas we can play because more amount of people are playing, more wear and tear is happening. It's just imagine in soccer game, you have a one goalkeeper here and goalkeeper, you see the goalkeeper area just completely have a hole in it. So it's just like cricket, right? Bowling area and batting area, just keep going down, 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 and it's dangerous. Before we used to maintain it, somehow we just, try to grade it with our feet or with our rake just to make sure it's all good and take care of it because we know we have a game. Now it's hard to do that. In the evening, if we do it, in the morning it's gone. And then our game came up, we need to spend more time to work on that. So it's, if next year something happened on existing field, cricket pitch, at least, thank you for the water this year. But next year, if something happened, that would be appreciated.
The other question I wanted to ask you was in regards to the 2 incidents that happened with ambulance.
Yes.
That was due to the ground itself, right?
That's due to the,
The actual ground and the fact the ball bounced. And
Because it's very uneven, so
that the ball bounced up on it and hit them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So because again, in baseball, you don't target the body.
No,
Yeah. In cricket, yes, I am targeting your body,
yeah,
right? Because we need to get you out. There is no strike 1, strike 2. Even though we give them the full rugby protective gear, the ball will find a way to hit.
yeah.
And then those were very dangerous time, concussions, and we forced them to wear helmet, but still,
It just
Yeah, and because of those incidents, we don't want to lose our members' interest. I said, my God, this is good. Look, sports injury can happen, pitch or no pitch, anywhere. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that it's because only for the ground, it's the player's mistake too. But they got this excuse to tell, oh, the pitch was not even, it looked like a snake, and that's why it hit me. Oh, it's Shelburne Cricket Club, it's not doing anything, town is not doing anything. So they start, anger,
I understood.
complaining. Yeah,
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
So for the shade area and whatnot, like, are you guys already using 10x10 tents that can be sort of taken up and put back down, or anything of that nature? 'Cause, I mean, that's what I would recommend as a sort of a temporary measure right now, just because this is just supposed to be a temporary cricket pitch, right? So building something that would be a permanent gazebo or a permanent shed, unless it would be somewhat movable, like we could then take it and put it into the location where the permanent cricket pitch is supposed to be. That is a little harder to convince, budget wise, right, to spend money on something that isn't supposed to necessarily stay there. So that's hopefully something that could maybe be easily fixed by just using some pop-up tents. That will protect against rain as well, and some shade. I don't see a problem with installing some poles or whatnot, as long as it doesn't affect the outfield or anything with regards to baseball, to put up your scoreboard. Your scoreboard is okay to be out in the rain and things of that nature. Okay,
no issue.
That's another thing, right? Is it would be out in the elements.
Yeah, even though if we need to maintain it, we will maintain it, we will paint it if there is, but right now I think it's very well designed.
in terms of the tent, we have actually gone through a couple of tents.
Yeah.
We use one for our store area, right? But as a club, we lose players and we gain players, right? We are non-for-profit organization, so we have to raise funds for these tents.
Yeah.
Right, and every year it's getting harder and harder, like I said, to buy all these things, because we always try to do the fundraisers, do all this stuff. We do go to tents because we try to provide these tents for the players, because we're trying to get spectators. We want to keep it growing, we want to keep it going also, right? And again, we have that there, but then if here we're buying new tents, it cuts into something else, especially when, tents cost.
Well, you can get them for $67.
But every year.
Yeah.
Don't last long.
But there is a solution, but again, when you mentioned it is a temporary field,
Yeah.
5 years temporary.
I know, yeah, exactly.
My hair were not
Yeah.
white when I started this thing, now my hair is white and I'm diabetic now.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
That's my next question for Jim is do we still have sort of a timeline as to creating a permanent cricket pitch?
Pretty sure, I believe that was looked at in the draft master plan.
Yeah,
I don't recall the date right off the top of my head, but it's, you're saying.
it's still a few years away. That's another thing I was thinking of, is how close are we to potentially getting that sort of permanent area, right? For the hydro, where are you expecting sort of a hydro box, like out in the field, like where is it that you want that?
So where is our tank area is, normally what we do, we bring our solar batteries, right, like just to punch in. Sometimes the battery is gone, we try to bring 200 feet wire.
Yes,
We use the same water outlet which is on the washroom, we just take it out and connect it there, just to connect our laptops, at least our light game can go off.
Right.
What we were expecting, because 5 years, for me, it's not temporary, we are there, even though if we have a temporary cricket ground, we still want to use KTH because of our cricket will grow, so we are playing here, we are playing there, so the shed or gazebo, whatever it is, will be, the line need to be inside the gazebo somewhere in the post, just 2 outlets just to get the electricity. That's it.
Wherever it's convenient, easier for you guys to install, we would then move our tent there if it has to be, right? It doesn't have to be where we have it right now. We have it right now because again, we had it next to the residential, complain about the noise. So we put it over there. You guys, if it's easier for you guys to put it near the tennis court, we will move the tent. Just avoid the residential side.
Yeah.
So that's the option.
Yeah, which it seems like it's an easy thing, but it's kind of not. Because you have to dig a trench and you have to, there's a lot.
That's why we come to the experts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I'm like, electricity isn't just like, it's not just running a cord and putting up a box,
And the
so
fun-
there's a lot of work in that.
And the fun part is that if we're gonna have a gazebo or a shed, you're right, that's you can rent too. So it's on rental, like if you want to rent that area, we will just same like ground. You want to rent that gazebo, yeah, that's the piece for it, and families are happy to pay for it. So that's something, again, it's not 5 years for me, it's not temporary anymore. Everyone is playing and everyone is returning. Very 5% of people are not returning to the club, but we are getting 15% new players every year.
Right.
So it is growing, so it's gonna stay. We like to keep it, and we want to keep it.
We
So
want that too,
Yeah.
right? So now your new members, are they Shelburne
Shelburne.
resident base?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, cause that makes a big difference,
Yeah, 'cause
right?
yeah, so
Honestly,
the town is growing.
we love to
right?
see people coming in, but at
Yeah.
the same time, right, it's taxpayers' money that's paying for
Correct.
upgrades, right? So if your club is growing exponentially, but it's outside sources, their tax money isn't helping to pay to upgrade
Yes.
fields, right? So that's.
We're still 90% Shelburne.
Good,
children, and even the 10% which are coming, they are paying those out
Yes, of
town
course.
fees, so sort
Yes.
of they are contributing.
yes, not
Uh,
as much as taxpayers.
That's-
Let's just
that's
remember that.
Okay, perfect. So I think so that's the whole thing, if
Yeah,
there's no other questions, we're good.
Okay, yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Sorry, Councilor Sherry.
Sorry, just a quick question, the other club that is there, using the field as well, have you had conversations with them about locations and park use, and is there a buy-in from them, and is there any financial, is there a partnership there, I guess, is the question.
So the question is, there is no partnership, number one, that's a straightforward answer. Actually, there is always some kind of conflict. Intentionally, unintentionally, I will not blame them. It's intentionally is that we have the locks on a container most of the time, like this happened this weekend. They lock the container with inside lock, and all my 22 players are standing outside waiting for one of the guys to come and open. We waste over 45 minutes. So there was a problem there. Second, what they are doing, they're utilizing the same marking, because we are playing professional, so we mark our areas very professionally. They came and marked on the same thing and they start using it, so it's more wear and tear. I don't have any right to say, because they are in their lease agreement, they can use any part of the ground, even though it's marked, so I'm not saying anything, but it's affecting our gameplay. But there is no discussion.
I'm just
Like
looking,
in partnership.
and thinking in terms of, you've got two clubs there, pulling resources.
No,
That would be our intention, of course, we had past history, we
Okay.
remember, it's
You don't have to,
Kind
you
of-
don't have to worry about.
yeah, it's kind of prohibited that, we would like to try.
Yeah, we try all-
Try,
Yeah.
but there is one member on the side that is not.
Okay.
All right, well, I mean, as I said, I appreciate the timing of this. I think the list of asks are, it's clear enough that,
Yeah.
we know what you're after. So I think as we work through this year's budget process, we can try to, firm up some of these numbers. I mean, I appreciate your estimates, but, we'll check those, check them out ourselves and see what we can do. So, I mean, there may be a chance we may ask you to come back at some point if there's some further clarification that we need, but like I said, I think it's pretty clear what you're asking for. See what we can do.
thank you very much.
I want water fountains too.
Thank you.
Not just KP.
Agree, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just have a motion then to receive Shelburne Cricket Club's presentation as in Councilor Donato, second by Councilor Shardy. All in favor? All right, council inquiry. Who's up first?
Walter.
No, I didn't mind before we.
I'll start then. So councilors Bishardi, Wagner, and myself were at AMO last week in Ottawa. I'll let Len and Lindsay chime in on their own, but I mean, it was a good conference, well attended. I heard at some point they said it was one of the largest, or if not the largest, attendance wise that they've had. A lot of the same stuff, and we heard from the premier, heard from the opposition leaders. For my part, on the Monday morning, I took part in a county delegation with Ministry of Transportation. We met with parliamentary assistant to talk about sort of the ongoing issues with Highway 10 corridor safety. And took the opportunity to chime in on the Shelburne bypass issue, restate our position, which has been stated several times in the last little while. We do believe that it really is the MTO's responsibility to lead the environmental assessment review. And seem to be agreeing from the other side of the table, that makes no sense. And I know those going on with our staff. One of the actual sessions that I attended, which I found kind of interesting, just given what we're doing in town, it was based on design and architecture of public spaces. And I mean, it was a couple hours, but the gist of it was that, you know, at communities, we ought to be designing public spaces that encourage people to come together. Whether or not it's through formal programming, but just creating those spaces that the community can use. And almost everything that these subject matter experts were talking about were things that have been considered and are being put into place in the Biddle Park master plan, which was kind of encouraging. You know, that these are the sorts of things that have been successful in other communities that drive, you know, that community building spirit, which I think is what we're trying to do with that space. You know, at some point in the next couple of years, you know, these experts may be looking at what we're doing here as a case study and show to other. So those are a couple of my highlights. But Glenn, Lindsay, if you want to add your 2 cents.
Big concern that I got from the floor around, and this is much countywide as it's townwide, is our aging population and services and accessibility for them. Wait lists are, I think there were 271 people waiting for bed at the Dufferin Oaks. There's a big concern about what's going to happen over the years in terms of, you know, our aging population, and are we looking at building, you know, do we need to encourage our developers to build bungalows as opposed to townhouses and single level homes? And aging in place was another big area of concern. That's kind of where the focus is towards. People out of hospital care facilities as long as possible.
No, and over the years, I've tried with developers to encourage stair lifts in housing when they put it in elevators. You can put a personal elevator in housing as well, especially if you're building 2 stories or more, townhouses, whatever. Developers aren't interested because they're not looking at the aging population, they're looking at the young people. They don't seem to see the elderly. Same thing as we've been trying for, I don't know how long, and how many council sessions for seniors apartments. Because not all seniors can also have a house and don't want to have a yard. They don't have the ability, they're done at that point. And they want to have some place where they can still see, and they don't want, like on Robert Street, an apartment with a balcony. They do want to still have a balcony, be able to go outside in some form or way. And we've tried that as well. We've tried, I think, at this council table and many discussions. I'm one of those seniors that's getting up in age. I don't think I'll get into Dufferin Oaks because if there's 270 people, I'm out of luck. Basically, I'm waiting on it. So this is why I'm saying, you know, it's something we've been pushing, and I hope that future councils will continue to push for that. That we continue to push these developers to think outside of the box, not just, you know, building bungalows. That's bungalows take up a lot of land. Property.
Profitability of the developers, their main concern, not, you know, it's how many units we can fit into X amount of square footage.
And bungalows
don't fit there.
That thing, yeah. So this is where you gotta think outside of the box, start pushing, stair lifts, elevators, if they're gonna do that for seniors apartments. So hopefully that continues on, and that we do think outside of the box when we're at this table. I mean, we can talk till we're blue in the face, they're gonna do what they want, doesn't matter what we say, unless we put it into some form of, I don't know how to say it, urban design. I guess is what I'm looking at. If it can be put into an urban design format where they have to, in some format, do some of the housing, some of it, not all of it, but, you know, a third or something, make it seem. Senior or disabled.
No,
It doesn't matter what you're looking at. And those houses will go a lot faster or easier for them to sell than they're trying to sell to young people, because seniors are looking for those.
Yeah, the rural model is lots of people who are traditionally living on farms are getting older and, you know, they're either passing their farms down to family or selling their farms, to other farmers or developers. And they wanna move to something smaller, something in town, something that's affordable, but they would prefer, because of their age, they don't wanna go up 3 flights of stairs. So I agree, chair lifts and elevators are, but again, you know, they'll be happy with it.
The thing is that gets me is these same people that you're talking about that are coming into town rural, when they sell their farm, they have a lot of cash. Because those farms are going for, you know, reasonable fair amount of price. They're not looking for a mortgage. They can pay well for whatever they're getting. And if the developer really thought about it, he could charge a little more for that house. Because he's upgraded it and still make a good sale quicker.
Yeah, or they're severing off an acre or two and building a home to live in.
Or
That's the other option.
yeah, that's.
But again, the focus is
Seniors,
seniors and our aging population and what are we going to do? What we're gonna
all the baby boomers are coming up. I'm one of them.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the, you know, what Len was kind of saying is there was emphasis on that. There was also some, you know, good discussion around the unhoused and, you know, I don't know, I find sometimes there's a lot of talk and no real solutions. So like that's where I struggle sometimes, you know, even when I attend the conferences, because everyone understands the issues at hand, and yet I'm sitting there going, okay, so the next thing you're gonna say is a solution, right? It's the fix to this. And there sometimes just never seems to be that. It's always just, we know it's a problem and we need to deal with it. Next topic. And I'm like, ah. So sometimes it frustrates me. You know, so that, I mean, I still enjoy the information that's provided. It's just sometimes, like I said, I just, it needs to be just that little bit more, right? To just, so that when I come back and I can say, okay, this is what, you know, the experts are saying, right? This is what we should be implementing. This is what we should be looking at. So that, you know, we have a camp, well, I wouldn't say they're encampments, but you know, there is a tent over by Canadian Tire in Orangeville. Now, that's not Shelburne, I get that, but it is locally enough that when I drive by, you know, it affects me. I worry about that person, right? So, you know, I just wish there was just that little bit more, sort of help so that I can say, okay, when I get back to that table, this is what I need to implement, or this is what we need to look for, or things that we need to address to make sure that we do have, you know, affordable housing within our community. And, you know, we don't end up in downtown Ottawa. I mean, you know, when we first got there, it wasn't too bad. And I've been to Ottawa a few times, and I said, this isn't normal, right? And then by the end of the conference, the normal behavior of Ottawa was being shown, right? And it's sad because it's an issue. It really is, and it doesn't just affect Ottawa. It affects London. It affects Toronto. It affects, you know, a lot of major cities as well. Another thing I took part in was Indigenous information with regards to gender-based violence, and you know, because I find that that's something that a lot of municipalities don't necessarily talk about. So there was some good information there and some avenues to, reach out to if regards to more information and things of that nature as well. So, overall great, but just sometimes just lacks a little bit for me. So, but yeah, it was a good time.
All right, any other inquiries on this before we press on? Okay, all right. So the first report is from our town planner regarding the application for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for 416, 420, and 428 Main Street. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, nice to see you all. Since my presentation up there, that correct? So I think Kim is on the line as well if there are questions following the report. And her and I have collaborated since the last council meeting. The public meeting was held in June for this application, and there were a few comments and questions raised both by council and one member of the public who was attending. So before I came back, I had indicated at that meeting that there would be a recommendation report with recommended conditions of approval and final details of the zoning bylaw amendment. But putting kind of one step in between where we were at that meeting and the final recommendation report, wanted to touch base with council one more time, just to get your feedback to see if we hit the mark on addressing some of the comments and concerns. So you'll see in my report, there are several sections on kind of the key themes that came out of that public meeting, and I've worked together with Kim to put some graphics together as well to help illustrate some of the ways that we think we can address some of the concerns that were raised. Go to the next slide, please. I won't reiterate the whole context and location again, but just to recap, because it has been a couple of months almost. The site is comprised of 4 properties. The one property has no address, and the others are 416, 420, and 428. And there are some woodland features in the largest property there that will be protected in part as part of this subdivision plan. And the next slide. And then just to recap the layout, you can see the larger blocks are the protected natural areas. And then the second largest blocks are really the future development blocks where the specific unit type hasn't been established, but do provide those opportunities, particularly for more seniors oriented housing and apartment buildings. But the initial phase of development is really focused on that ground related housing type, which is single detached, but predominantly also townhouses is the largest unit type. And then a new unit type that we haven't seen before, which helps to address kind of that entry level market housing need, and also possibly a component of the downsizing and reduced maintenance need, which is stacked townhouses. And next slide. Okay, so one of the key issues that was raised, and the first one I tackled in my report, is with respect to parking, and we were kind of anticipating there would be concerns around that. This is a fairly dense development, although the density is mitigated by the large blocks of environmental protection area. Parking does become more of a space constraint the narrower you make the lots and the narrower the driveways get, the narrower the garages get. So everything is oriented around kind of single wide garages for the units that are shown here. Every unit, however, that is shown would have its own independent garage, so that checks one box in terms of the one required parking space per unit that the zoning bylaw requires. So how do we address the practicality and reality that a lot of people end up using some of that space for storage? Some have larger vehicles that may not even fit inside a conventional single car garage. And also the fact that many families will have multiple cars involved, as we've experienced in some of the other developments where townhouses are predominant. So one of the strategies I referenced at the previous meeting, but we hadn't fully thought through in detail, is that kind of optimal location of the sidewalk so that we provide for pedestrian safety and we have kind of that contiguous pedestrian routing towards Main Street, where there will be a new sidewalk put in connecting to the downtown, towards the walkway in the north end, which will take you out to the rail trail and park, Natasha Patterson Park, and the schools to the northeast. towards John Street where, we would connect down to Main. And throughout the development. So what we've been able to do is by putting the sidewalk on the optimal side for that, it also happens to optimize the parking. So virtually all but 22 of the units with this layout of sidewalks would have a driveway that's long enough to park at least 2 cars in tandem. For the stacked townhouses at the bottom, you can see those driveways are even longer than that. They could be long enough for 3 cars. That will depend in part on the site plan application for that block, where we'll have more detail exactly on the driveway design and placement. In addition to that, what we proposed is for the townhouse end units and the corner lots where you have a wider lot. Right now, the zoning standards are a little bit too restrictive on driveways that don't allow you to have a driveway that's quite wide enough for 2 side-by-side cars. It's a car and half a car, which practically speaking, people might park half on the grass and half on the driveway, or not tell us and pave their driveway wider, and that raises some issues as we've seen in Somerville. So just increasing the maximum driveway width to 5.2 meters. Regardless of whether that lot is 7.5 meters or 9 meters wide, all those end units and corner lots would be allowed to have that. Some may not actually functionally be able to be designed that way because of grading concerns, but for the most part, that would address 22 units where otherwise they might only be restricted to that single car wide driveway. And then the last component of this parking strategy is really to optimize the on-street parking. I know that's a seasonal solution that helps with visitors. It's not for overnight parking. It does help in the summer months if you have a lot of bikes out in the garage, if you have visitors coming over more frequently or those kinds of things, or if you're moving big things around or building a deck in your backyard, whatever it may be, having some on-street parking can be helpful. So we've been able to show on this plan, you can see along the west side of Street C, which is John Street extended, that entire stretch of natural environment block, a row of on-street parking spaces would be available there. And we're just showing the longer blocks where in the longer term, in the full build of the subdivision, those would be available. The reason it's not shown all the way across block number 9 is because eventually that block would be developed into these driveways. You don't know where things go. But in the near term, in the initial phase, that row of parking could extend all the way up that west side of the street. So that would about double the number of spaces that could go there. And then on the south side of Street C as well, in the north end of the development, Street B, which is the main north-south street in the development, is a little more restricted, where on either the east or west side you could put 3 or 4 on-street parking spaces. It doesn't really matter which side they go on. And then Street A is, and the rest of Street C is really a matter of displacing the driveways for the most part to optimize curb space between those driveways. Except for, I guess, the west side of Street C along the future apartment block there would be campus space for additional on-street. And so, I think if you go to the next slide, this is a bit more detail about that. Approximately 43 spaces are shown on the plan for on-street parking, and it would actually be more than that. Again, considering the future development blocks in the first phase, and that John Street extends right down to Main. And then the other 2 components of the strategy primarily being extending those driveway lengths and widening them wherever possible. So that's how we tackled that, which I would consider probably the main concern that was raised with this subdivision. And if you go to the next slide, the other was about the lack of parkland, and we reflected a little bit further on that. There is a lot of open space that will be dedicated to the town, primarily for natural environment purposes here. Some of it will have kind of tableland or enough space, at least for benches, maybe some interpretive features, maybe for independent, like a swing set or some minor small scale play equipment. But in terms of a consolidated playground where you've got multiple components to it in one spot. We looked at opportunities within kind of the stormwater block and around that wetland block. And because of grading and drainage requirements, and keeping in mind safety, we avoided that. We reviewed that with the engineers and had a fairly lengthy meeting discussion about it and discovered that really isn't the safest spot to try and put that. There is opportunity up in the north end, and it is a little, visibly, we want to try to optimize the view to it a little bit better from the street, and that might be restricting fencing or widening that walkway block a little bit. But essentially it'd be a dedicated paved pedestrian path that would go back to that edge of the woodland along the rail trail. So it would be visible from the rail trail as well. You could have more of a linear playground. And for a size benchmark, we use the one in Greenbrook Village as an example, which is about a 12-meter play surface radius. This one would be more about 10, and then could be more elliptical in shape, so longer to fit more components in. So there definitely is space to do that. The exact details again would come later in the process, but the applicants have been quite willing to try to accommodate that. And the main trade-off there would be instead of the pure 5% parkland action loop payment, whatever is functional parkland that gets dedicated as part of that would be deducted off of that. Okay. So we won't achieve the 5%, but it would be probably there. Then the cash balance can be used towards actually installing the features. And the next slide, just a few more details on the zoning. I already covered the second point here about the driveway widths, adding that flexibility in. How we have added the numbers. Kim did catch that we used, I think, in the 600 Main Street development, maybe R510, maybe 511. So we may have to bump those numbers by one more. A copy of the bylaw itself, formal town formatted bylaws included in our report. But when we bring back, hopefully at the next meeting, if the council accepts the recommendation tonight, the finalized bylaw. The one component that was missing that a member of the public had questioned, we reflected further on is why wasn't there minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, and next open space requirements for the staff now does. So we have added the requirements in after doing some more review of comparable municipal standards for that unit type. And a maximum 34 units, just to control the density of that block. Again, the detail of that would be subject to a site plan approval application. No other real changes to the zoning amendment, though. The rest is as per what was presented at the public meeting. And the next slide. Before I get to the next steps, just a couple of other elements in my report that I quickly want to cover. One is about the site triangles and the lot coverage requirements. So I haven't put it in the presentation, but I summarized 4 bullets that describe each of the intersection conditions. They're all T intersections in this subdivision, so there will be no 4-way intersections other than the main entrance, which is already built on one side. Those site triangles meet the 9-meter requirements at provincial highways. Those will be nice and big and visible. The 4.5-meter ones, there are mitigating factors that help to improve the pedestrian safety and snow storage space at each one of those. It's unique in each case. At the very least, each of those intersections will be stop control on one street. The very north one probably is stop control in 3 directions. So just to maximize pedestrian safety and slow down the traffic on that longer straight stretch of road. So these are measures that have been implemented in other subdivisions with the multi-way stops, the village field gate, for example, and with those site triangle sizes. Again, I haven't heard, other than perhaps this last winter with extra snow being a bit more tight in terms of snow storage space, that this has been an overwhelming problem. The benefit of doing it the way it's shown on the plan is that the triangle is actually built right away. That's how on property control. And the zoning actually looks for site triangles on private property. And in that case, then you have to go out and enforce the bylaw to require people not fences, vegetation, or things that can block sight lines. And then the last couple parts are more about the design of the stacked townhouses. While we can't directly prescribed brick material, for example, or stone or other masonry for the facades facing main or more generally throughout the building design. Just like any subdivision, we will have a standard schedule of design guidelines that encourage all of those things and aesthetically pleasing design along that entry point. It is a pretty important gateway coming into town, and I think that unit type will really allow for kind of a spruced up advanced view coming into Shelburne from the west and coming into this development from Main Street. Just picking up on what Councilor Bouchardy was talking about with respect to the annual conference and some of that discussion. There are no purpose-built seniors units. I want to be clear about that included in this proposal. The question of whether that's something that can be mandated or prescribed through policy, unfortunately, we can't do policy. We do have a lot of policy that encourages that. The zoning is flexible enough to allow that. There's nothing saying bungalows can't be built. There's nothing saying that single level living can't be accommodated with block coverage requirements that don't allow buildings large enough or anything like that. It really is a function of, I think, the economics and tested market of family homes in this community, which is driving the course. But the good news with this development is it does include those blocks for future units that aren't set out right now, but would very likely be more oriented to accommodating seniors, especially apartments. And then with the stacked townhouses, at least one level of those units will be ground level living. So in all your bedroom, kitchen, and everything on one level. And it is a downsizing unit. You're going to see now. Some of the townhouses may start to accommodate those units as well. It could be 2 stories throughout. We don't have that detail at this point in time. The actual builder, hasn't been determined, and it's a few years out. We'd obviously share more details as we have them, but at this stage, we can't establish a condition of approval saying 20% have to be for seniors or anything like that, because they just won't stand up in the policy environment. So one couple that was here was concerned about privacy impacts to their property, which is immediately to the west, and we will put in the conditions of approval that OSC plans have to continuous road privacy fencing along that boundary until if that the land is developed and the streets extended to the west in the future. So it's got that mix of at least recognizing what is there now, but has the opportunity for those folks to potentially have their property up for development in the future. I touched on this at the public meeting, but the last point there is that this will be the first plan that we get drafted through. The council supports it without having actually servicing to allocate to it.
Yeah.
And that isn't unheard of. Actually, the summer hill at Greenbrook Village started out that way, where there was only enough for half of each. I came into the picture just after that whole dispute got resolved, because they were originally draft approved. There was enough capacity to turn if there wasn't. So we're not going to get into any trouble that way. We're sure that there isn't capacity at this point in time. We're sure that this is going to rely on wastewater plant upgrades. And so very, very clearly, only the actual conditions of approval require the owners acknowledgement in a legal agreement that this is subject to wastewater plant upgrade, for which the town hasn't set a timeline to implement and hasn't established a funding mechanism. Although, as you heard earlier, the development charges are being positioned to allow that to come into play, whether it's through grant applications or through developer early payments or funding. What draft plan approvals do allow you to do when you don't have that servicing capacity is it gives more authority and comfort for the developer and the town to actually enter into prepayment agreements or financing. We don't have anything solidified with this developer on that, nor is this development big enough to tackle that monster of the servicing issue, but it is one of several that collectively could start to get us in an alternative solution environment instead of having to rely entirely on a grant.
Right.
So overall, this is moving in the direction of a recommendation for me, but again, wanted to pause here, see if there's any comments or questions further after the last meeting or based on the additional information received tonight.
Thanks, Steve, and I appreciate the sort of mid-process update. I appreciate the fact, I think without exception, all of the concerns that were expressed at that June meeting have been addressed.
Yeah.
So Kim, thanks for your part in that as well, and thanks for being a cooperative and willing partner. Councilor Donato?
Just a quick question. On the, house, stack housing or whatever it is, that's facing Highway 89. Noise fence because of vehicles going down that road, especially tractor trailers and whatnot that drive. They are fairly noisy sometimes using their Jake brakes when they're not asked not to do it, even that's all we can do is ask them not to. Is there a noise, some form of a noise fence or noise barrier going up in between them? Be it trees, living fence, I don't know, whatever.
So actually, one of the reasons to orient that way, aside from having kind of a front facade of the dwelling facing Main Street and have it look better that way instead of.
Is to stop the noise from entering the bedrooms?
Well, that's part of it, but also the front yard isn't subject to the same noise requirements and protections that the backyard is. Now, in this case, because they're stacked and parking is in back, they don't really have a usable backyard area where they have a barbecue area, patio, so forth. So this would be more like living in an apartment where you're looking for public space, you're looking to go to Fiddle Park for your picnic, and you know, have in your backyard a big private and a picnic area or the patio area, because that would be your parking. So that is one of the trade-offs of this unit type, just at that location, that you don't necessarily have that rear yard space, the backyard. I think the longer term hope is that we can reduce the truck traffic on the highway and that.
In 5 years.
Love the positivity.
Yeah.
Very positive, but never happened.
But I keep saying on that, we may not be close, but we're still a hell of a lot closer to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
true.
mean, it's still a long-term thing.
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty close 15 years ago. I thought I had an agreement till the guy retired. So, anyway, yeah, that's the only concern I would have is that we don't have residents that don't have the ability to sleep at night because of these continual traffic.
The bedrooms will be well protected and they'll have that provision for air conditioning so that they can close all their windows at night and not deal with the highway traffic noise. But in terms of a rear yard amenity area that's noise protected, they wouldn't have that. Nothing would prevent them from having that barbecue up front or having some chairs out and enjoying that. It just couldn't be like being downtown until the trucks are.
Other than diesel fuels, tractor trailers, something.
Councilor Samples?
I can't remember, is the town, are we looking after the roads in there, or is it like a contract?
Yes, all of the roads would be.
So I thought, so
Yeah.
I appreciate the widening of the driveways. So now, aren't we putting all this snow? So I know you talked about some of the gateways and stuff like that, I get that, but I know just in normal towns and stacked areas, there's always going to be concern, snow being thrown up back out into the roads, and then the piles are gonna come by and they're gonna shove it into the neighbor's driveway. And then the neighbor's gonna complain because now they've got a 4-foot wing in their driveway, you know what I mean? So I'm just really concerned about snow in this short, this very tight area, you know what I mean?
Specifically for the stack.
Stacked, specifically for stacks, you know what I mean? So
Townhouses.
townhouses, and when you get 5 or 6 in a row, your front yards aren't very big, and where you put it, you know what I mean? So I just wanna make sure that everybody's aware that there's gonna be a lot more work in that area, I think, than we normally would do with snow removal. I think it may be something that we're gonna have to stay on top of more often than we would just in an older development that has space to put a pile of snow, right?
Yes, in some respects, the main item that, or area of development that we haven't dealt with specifically as a previous example that we've got that issue addressed is the stack house because, it's about a 6 to 7 meter wide lot. Two driveways, two rows, side by side. So I was actually emailing him earlier this afternoon, we haven't quite fully figured out a good solution for that. But there will be a site plan process to detail that.
Yeah.
One way to do it though would be have each pair of units have a shared tapered driveway, so it widens, so they both fit into the garage and have 2 spaces to park in front of that garage. But then in the boulevard portion, you have a driveway with snow storage space. That doesn't give you as much snow storage space, maybe as a ratio to driveway space as
It doesn't,
you
right?
might need, but the other element to that is there wouldn't be a sidewalk on that side of the street, so it's not the road and sidewalk clearing, fighting each other. So there's more boulevard space and road space to store the snow.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the idea of widening the driveways, giving more options with that. I think it's a fair trade-off because we have snow, what? 5 months a year, you know what I mean? Maybe, so, but I just, Jim's crew or whatever, it has to be aware that that area may have to be developed,
Yeah.
like, picked up snow more often than we would somewhere else, you know? So,
Yes, and ours, the next point, which is as you get these more. Well, just like the downtown on street parking.
Yeah.
There's some clearing element, there's some roof element and some. Heavy winter for that unit than the rest of the conventional.
Correct.
They may have to use payloader go through there rather than the truck.
Yeah, something. But yes, so comments and everything, kudos to both you guys for everything you guys did on that. That is probably one of the better ones that I've sat through, you know, coming back to us with countermeasures to everything that we talked about. So kudos to both of you on that. So good working.
You know, I don't like development, but this is great. This I can get behind, this I can vote for. So, yeah, I appreciate, taking our comments and really kind of running with it because, we are seeing a greater need for driveway space, right? Kids are staying home longer and, parents are moving in with their kids or vice versa and that sort of thing. So we are seeing the need for just having a little bit more driveway space for gardening, right? And I'm glad that you guys were able to kind of fit in sort of like a small playground. I'd like a little bigger, I mean, block 9 is still open, but I know, I get it. But at least there's something, right? Because again, when you see stacked townhouses, homes and things of that nature, or townhomes in general, it's usually young families, it's usually starter homes, right? And so there's going to be kids over there for sure. And my concern was getting to the closest park, right? And I mean, the great thing is the rail trail's there, so that'll take you over to Natasha Patterson, which is fantastic. So, I mean, that's, a secondary option, which as we have seen, Natasha Patterson Park now is amazing. And hopefully we'll have a water fountain, I'm just, throwing that out there. But no, everything looks great. And with us approving this now, does it sort of solidify it a little bit? Like, what if we're not all sitting around this table in the next 2 or 3 years and this comes back and the council of the day change it, like, so that the driveways aren't as big anymore, because right now it's great. Right?
You still didn't like it.
Yeah, look at it, yeah, cannot change
And I
it.
didn't re-summarize the last slide there, but the next step would be one more report for me and be possibly even. We just got conditions of approval from the NBCA today.
Okay.
And we drafted the conditions and we'll review that with Kim's team over the next week and a bit. Bring back those full details. If council supports it, it would be just like a typical subdivision conditional approval for 3 years.
Okay.
With the opportunity for the applicant to come back and request extensions prior to the approval, and it may very well be necessary depending on what happens with the wastewater plant.
Yeah,
But in a perfect world, 3 years from now, we have a servicing solution and we can start reservicing.
perfect, okay, great, thank you so much.
Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion then to receive Steve's report and to direct staff to report back to council either next meeting or in September with recommended finalized conditions of draft plan of subdivision approval and a finalized zoning bylaw amendment for consideration.
can do this.
Enthusiastically, by Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Sample. All in favor? Carried. Thanks again, Steve. Thanks, Kim, and see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, next report is from our CAO regarding a draft memorandum of understanding regarding the Shelburne Public Library building and property.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. Council's been provided with, in the appendices, the background on the initiation of this discussion, and which is culminated in this report. The Shelburne Public Library is an asset that is owned by the town of Shelburne. We've recently been dealing with some issues with clarity and, I guess, follow-up with respect to a number of invoices and expenses related to the asset that the library board staff have indicated is not responsible to pay. So that initiated us leading some kind of analysis to determine how best to create oversight or relationship specific to the building and the property for the management of the issues related to that property. So we did look at the MOUs with every municipality, and specific to facilities and property only. There are MOUs that are fairly comprehensive and cover a wide range. So through that process, there were a couple of questions that we had in terms of clarification. One, which is simply referenced in here, and you have all the emails between myself and the CEO of the library, was that we did have questions trying to understand the government and the authorities of this board. I didn't know with my question whether or not this is a union public library, not formally recognized as such. Clarified to me that if not, we still have questions on the governance and the authorities under which this library board is constituted, only because there's representatives of other municipalities that are traditionally approved, and the Grand Valley was referenced in here, one local library, through the authority of this council or the local council through a bylaw. So there was an example in 1 year where Mulmer left and Mulmer came back, and that would automatically trigger a governance process to formalize that, if you can't come and go as you wish, I guess, in our world. Yeah. So we set that aside, and I've acknowledged that we still need to get clarification on that process, because it is important and not inclusive or exclusive of this issue. So the budget for the Shelburne Public Library is attached. Council is aware that through our annual budget, you fund and approve contributions to the library, and it's approximately 54% to 2025. And based on the 2025 budget, there's no cap. As I'm going to jump to the financial section. As Carrie had included in her financial report not that long ago, we had recognized that through the capital asset management schedule and these funds going forward, we have $50,000 in a reserve going forward starting in 2020. So to help create a formal relationship with property and building, we've created an MOU. Staff drafted it, and we had legal review. So we're confident that it's solid. We looked at a number of other municipalities, like I said. I have extracted what I think is probably the most important components of this, that we're reading everything in the attachment from Schedule A. So what this is going to clarify is roles and responsibilities, and will transfer the decision-making regarding the capital assets to the town of Shelburne. It also transfers the cost, but it transfers those accountabilities and the management of that to us. With the ultimate authority to approve that will be through council, through the budget schedule. So what you're going to see in the general ledger going forward is not one line like you've seen now at the funding. You're going to see more detail on the capital schedule. While the library technically doesn't pay for it in the town of Shelburne, will, if you approve this relationship approach, you're going to see that detail in the capital budget schedule on the capital town of Shelburne. So it'll be much more enhanced. And I think we will then take a much more progressive approach to that management. So what this means is that all code responsibilities, all functional issues with respect to building become our responsibility to oversee. That doesn't mean we pay for computers and those kind of things. Those are operational. So that's under building maintenance. In the event, and it's a clarifier in here, which is important, that if something required a building closure, part or full, that would be the town of Shelburne determination and advice or recommendations in terms of the best timing to do that with the appropriate members of the staff. We've also addressed ground maintenance and equipment. And we've clarified that this relationship is based on the library As is really the case now, we're formalizing that being a tenant of the building. And therefore, as a tenant, you have certain roles and responsibilities, and as the owner of the building, we have certain roles and responsibilities. We had indicated in here that we would open this up for review every 24 months or as required. And that ultimately this comes process-wise to you as council first. You approve it, then it is sent to the library board for the consideration of approval. And then ultimately what has to happen is that it'll come back to council for confirming bylaw and we rescind, which moving back, there was a 1991 bylaw and it was specific to the expansion. However, there were certain terms within there that provided clarification that all costs related to maintenance operations and capital are the responsibility of the library, which ultimately means proportionally municipalities that are participating are proportionally responsible. Yes, that ultimately is changing with this scenario, but we also believe that we manage those costs very, very proactively, and council will be very well informed. Our goal is usually 5 to 10. Yeah. So that really is the report in a nutshell. I'm certainly happy to go through any of the detail in the appendices, but I thought I'll wait for your questions on that before we go. And we would then hope to see this come back. I know the library has a sort of reset under recession. But that, what do you want to call it? Reset? Reset. A reset in the summer, they don't meet. Probably the most at earliest that they'll be meeting. Again, I would hope that we would be back to council in early October if possible with formalization.
Okay. This question? Okay.
I like it.
So the motion is to receive the report, approve the MOU as prepared by our staff, and then to provide that MOU to the Shelburne Public Library Board for its by Councilor Fegan, seconded by Councilor Otto. All in favor? Carried. Okay. All right, next one. Lots of public interest on this. So Jennifer is going to give us an update on the automated speed enforcement.
Thank you, through your worship. This is an information update for you, just.
You're gonna tell us the threshold, right? Because that's everything. If I could ask one more time. If I get asked one more time. Sorry.
Hey, now, you like, no answer.
Trial and error.
Council has received 3 prior staff reports regarding automated speed enforcement. As communicated through the entirety of this project, the primary objective is to enhance road safety by effectively reducing vehicle speed. AFE aims to encourage lasting behavioral changes among drivers, fostering safer driving habits and protecting vulnerable road users. The ASC program aims to enhance road safety, promote safer driving, reduce collisions and injuries, and increase public awareness. The automated speed enforcement program will officially go live on September 5th. The coming soon signs were installed on June 5th, which meets the legislated 90-day notice requirement. This week, the coming soon signs will be changed to municipal speed camera. Cameras are being installed this week as well in the locations noted at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3. There are a total of 10 cameras installed. Communications to residents have included website updates, social media, print and radio outreach to ensure residents are aware. Enforcement will be carried out in accordance with Ontario Regulation 355.2. The fines associated are noted on page 3 and 4 of my report. These fines are set and regulated by the province. As advised previously, the municipality is not disclosing the threshold speed that will trigger a fine issue. The threshold speed follows Ontario Traffic Council guidelines. The posted speed limit in a school zone and safety zone. We are using the Township of Vestas Joint Processing Center to adjudicate ticket processing in the township. Included as Appendix 2 is a public information guide that provides additional information for members of the public. Please feel free to forward along this information to residents that may be reaching out to you. In addition, please ensure to direct them to the Joint Processing Center directly. Their contact information is noted at the top of page 2. information is also provided. Staff will continue to provide regular updates to council. Compliance trends as project. That's just a very high level overview. Any questions?
Right? Questions?
Where they are currently placed, we had to advertise for 90 days. When we move them to another location, we have concerns or that has proved there is an issue. We again have to do the 90 days advertisement.
That's correct.
So we would start that process even though they are currently in use where they are, to get that 90-day notice out to the public, correct?
But yes, that's correct, your worship. We haven't determined any locations as of yet. First, like to see this roll out, to see what causes and effects on the lease steps before we look at.
And to the public, there is no point asking us as counselors questions regarding the automatic speed enforcement because we don't have the answers.
Correct, that's where you would direct them back to that due processing center, where there are provincial presence officers on staff. To work on.
So don't phone us, don't pop us, we don't have the answers.
Well, we have an answer, we send them to where we need to send them to, so it's my job to still give you information, it's just that's where I have to send you.
Somewhere?
Well, because we don't have the answer, so the answer is to send them to who does.
Councilor Charles?
So just in the areas that we do not have cameras, are we sending speed notification signs and it's like we're not decommissioning those will still be effect in other areas and that was determined possible next location.
Correct, through your worship, so to utilize those cameras, that will assist us in determining the next location.
Thanks.
I'll just piggyback on that, just to clarify as well that council made it clear that traffic calming was a critical priority, that you expressed concerns about the speed. Data that we collected through the camera, the other camera sections of that, reinforce that on like a systematic basis. The data was there, the heat mapping that we have currently too for other uses reinforced. So as we've indicated through the process, that any revenue that's generated through this program is reinvested back into traffic calming safety measures. So as Jennifer referenced, if we identify through our data, in addition to collecting what's going to be data from cameras, but through the other program, we then would come back to council through the budgetary process or whatever other a report process to outline where other cameras can go. But what we are expecting based on the evidence that's been happening with other municipalities is the moment the cameras go in, behavior changes. And that would reinforce this isn't about revenue because behavior changes, there's no revenue. What we have to be recognizing though is when one route that is slowing you down may create you having a detour, and we will be able to document that. And if that is the case, then we can systematically look at quadrating this thing, because we ultimately want to eliminate the excessive speeds that we know we're experiencing, that the community has told us are dangerous, and really rectify a safe community walkability and other transportation. So we're quite confident that we've done very aggressive with respect to 5 cameras 2 each way. We should see some drastic changes in behavior probably within 30 days. And if we don't, those people are going to have some excessive.
And the goal is traffic calming, no, I mean like that, I mean, that's what the public needs to understand.
So just
The
to
goal-
clarify, like, so we've noticed that I know we had some cyber crime, I can't remember where we were, but Councilor Bernardo likes bollards, doesn't like speed humps as much. If they're effect and Kyle and Councilor Vegan. So there are elements of the traffic calming program that we initiated, so we're speed humps, bumps, the bollards, which some people were very concerned that they're gonna do, they are very flexible, but they're highly effective in slowing. So we will continue to look at what components of that program will expand. So through the cameras, without moving them for 90 days, we can actually put those bollards in fairly quickly and fairly inexpensively.
Yeah.
And so people might not like all these visual impediments everywhere, but if it actually slows people down, then that is part of the effect. I was gonna say speed bumps on every street, but I think that's excessive.
The bollards do work. I they work very well, especially when people think their vehicle's been scratched.
Yeah, 100%.
Councillor Sample.
Thanks for the update, Jennifer, but the flexibles, flip flop sites, bollards, they
None of
do,
them are listed.
no, they actually do work. I came into town today coming from the west, and the cars in front of me, when they saw the 40 in the middle of the road, the brake lights all came on.
Yeah.
Not necessarily paying attention to the 40 on the side, but 40 in the middle of the road, and all the brake lights came on.
Yeah.
So and they work, they
Yeah,
just do,
they
they
work.
just need to be more, they just.
Yeah.
We see
We
them
can
as a
blank
helps.
it.
Yeah.
And we know from our experience that where you're seeing the prevalent use of them is in school zones and crosswalks.
Yes.
And so in Caledon, you're seeing them in Burlington, I mean, I was at my parents, don't go to she, Lincoln, and all of those smaller communities in there. So we know they're effective, and they're also a very effective tool cost wise. Like, I know speed humps are also, they're very costly.
Yeah.
And we have heard, we do appreciate that if you have a low lying car, it's not friendly, and we know that there was some reservation from emergency services in some situations. From if you can find alternatives to that, they.
Secondly to that, I don't know if we're gonna see a 30 days decrease in that. I don't think it's 30, I think it's gonna be longer than that.
No.
Because processing, I think people aren't seeing those fines for 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, so
That
30
still
days.
within 30 days.
So I understand, just 30 days, I might say 45. Let's give you 45.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say this, I think, as of the 5th, once people know the cameras are live, we're going to see an immediate effect.
Yeah.
Because people are already well aware of this, they already know it's coming. As I said, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's getting, peppered with questions, of what's the threshold? Residents in town are well aware it's coming, and I think, that they will adjust their speed, knowing that these things are live.
They will, but I'm still getting the question, where are they going? Where are they going? Really? You can't see the signs that say, oh, yeah, cameras coming down?
Yeah.
They're going right there. Where the signs are, that's where they're gonna be. So,
Okay, but we have a dedicated webpage
yes.
on this program. And we are also going to be sharing data on heat mapping going forward, similar to other global partners. We will be giving update on. We will bring the data back to you on the ticket issue, the numbers, the speed, the variance. Yeah. And changes essentially after that. And that's what you're really looking at. So this is the behavior before, this is the behavior you're experiencing, and then you demonstrate the change in behavior. And usually you can say, well, that is a direct response to this project.
Anything else? Okay, can I have a motion then to receive Jennifer's report for information? Councillor Sample, second by Councillor Bichardi. All in favor? Carried. All right, any notices of motion? All right. Communications, I'm gonna start this one off with number 1. So this was the email that's included from August the 12th. From the province regarding our application for funding for the wastewater treatment plant under the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. Not the announcement or notification that we wanted to receive, essentially just telling us our application was unsuccessful. The deputy mayor and I and Carrie and Steve Burnett met with Sylvia Jones in this room Friday afternoon. We met for about an hour, had what I think conversation. Won't get into all of the details, but I think suffice it to say, we made very clear to our MPP, number one, at this point, that this is the third time that why not been successful. Number two, that essentially as a community, we are at a crossroads moment when it comes to deciding which way we're going forward. That we either proceed with the full-fledged kind of design rebuild of the plant, which is going to allow us added capacity for future growth, or we do sort of what we locally call the do nothing approach, which is still $15 million, but I mean that tidies up some problems with the plant, but doesn't afford us any capacity for future growth. And Steve Burnett, kind of clarify that that's not something that's scalable. So if that's the option to go, that essentially puts a freeze on development from 15 years. So as I've said so many times over the last couple of years, and I think the rest of you are behind me in this, we as a council are not prepared to fund the kind of work that needs to be done at that plant to accommodate future growth on the backs of our existing taxpayers. So if the province is not prepared to invest in the growth they're asking us to absorb, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we stress that the work at this plant in this community is not only going to accommodate additional residential growth, as is the case in some of the other neighboring municipalities who have been successful. What's at stake here is residential growth, as well as long-term care beds, as well as perhaps most importantly, potential future industrial and commercial growth. At the end of the conversation, Sylvia was very receptive. Actually, before she left the building, made some phone calls. Don't want to get a whole lot of detail as to where things are going. But the deputy mayor and I have had some additional follow-up conversations with her over the course of the last few days. And I think at least the issue and the urgency involved in the issue is in front of those that need to know.
Right.
So where that takes us, I don't know for sure because, until we have a check in hand, we're not gonna count on it. But I definitely feel a lot more encouraged sitting here today than I did last Thursday before we.
There's not much more you can add. You've already said so. Again, it'll push in every direction possible.
And I think we'll hear something probably within the next couple.
Thanks, guys.
Anything else? Communications list. Can I have a motion then to receive those items? Councilor Samples, Councilor Egan, all in favor? Carried. All right, next up is our closed session. And then after that, there actually isn't anything else on the agenda, but for those public members who are here, by all means, feel free to stick around for the end if you want. How long do you think?
I would say 10 to 15.
Okay, can I have a motion then to move us into closed session according to section 239 sub 2 sub B of the Municipal Act for the purpose of discussing personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. By Councilor Donato, seconded by Councilor Wagner. In favor? Carried. Okay. Right, so we're back in open session. We have one resolution coming out of closed session. Look for a mover and seconder for be it resolved that the information from the CAO be received and that staff be directed to provide a report and recommendations regarding town's committee structure and committee administration to council by the end of October 2025. By Councillor Bernardo, second by Councillor Dirty. All in favor? It's carried. I can have a motion for the confirming bylaw. Begin, second, Councilor Bernardo, all in favor, it's carried, and a motion to adjourn. Councilor Sample, second by Councilor Bernardo, all in favor,
Aha.
carried.